All right, number 26, we're giving the parent function, listing the transformations, and graphing. Then identify the domain and range using interval notation and the asymptote of the function. Okay, so first let's do the transformations because that will help us see what the parent function is. So what are the transformations here? Vertical stretch by 2. See this 2 in the front? That's a vertical stretch. So vertical stretch by 2. Oh, the floating 2. There we go. All right, and what is my other transformation here? Down 3. That's the minus 3 at the end. How did you know it was down and not like to the right 3?
Oh, because if it'll be right, it'll be next to x.
Right, it'd be in parentheses. That's why. You know that it showed in parentheses. Very good. Okay, so now you see what I've highlighted, right, as our transformations. That really lets you visualize what is left as the parent function. So what is the parent function here? Log of x, right. So your parent function is going to be g of x equals log of x. Alrighty, so now we have to graph it, but you can't find any points for log of, like you don't know any points for log of x, right? So how are we gonna go about graphing such a thing?
Unless you like change it somehow, I don't know how to explain
Do that inverse.
Right, you gotta find the inverse. I feel like that's what you're trying to say, but yeah. You're trying to find the inverse of log of x so you can get some values here. Okay, so log of x. Alright, that's the parent function. What's the base here so we can just help ourselves? 10, right? Log base 10 of x, and we should put equals what? Or in front maybe. Y equals, right? Because we're trying to find the inverse. You might not want to write it here because it's going to overlap my table. I'm just going to erase this later. Alright, so we want to find the inverse of this to help us find some values. So how do I find the inverse of this? There's 2 steps. What's the first step? You could do that, but that makes it harder. Well, there's an easier way to do this. That's the final answer, so you just skipped everything. All right, the first step, though, yeah, so you got the answer, but remember, you want to be able to differentiate the 2 steps here. The first step is to switch to exponential form. So what would this be in exponential form? X equals 10 to the y, that's right. There we go. And then the next step is to actually finish the inverse, right? And then what do we have to do to finish the inverse? Right, so y equals 10 to the x. Right, so that's the answer you got, right? But that's, you were skipping a step there, okay? So make sure you can do both steps. So y equals 10 to the x. That's right, so this is what we're going to use to help us find some points, right? We got x, and how do I find the y's then? 10 to the x, right? That's what it says right here. Y equals 10 to the x. So now, since we're doing transformations of this log, we just need 3 points, right? So what are the 3 points that we're using for x? You could do, all of them if you wanted to, but it's unnecessary. All right, so if I put in 0 for x, what would I get? 1. If I put in 1 for x, what do I get? And what about negative 1? That's right. Okay, what was the point of finding these values? To find the inverse, right? So we take the inverse of these. So what are my x and y's for my function that I'm looking for? And then the y's? That's right. Okay. All right. So now we just have to apply the transformations, and we'll be done. So let me erase this because it's in the way. First transformation is a vertical stretch by 2. So what would that do to my table values? Right, time the y's by... Okay, why did I say time? See, you're ruining my vocabulary. Multiply the y's by 2. So we're going to multiply all of these by 2. And so what are my new y's at this point? Right. Then I have down 3, right, as my other transformation. And what would that do to my table values? Subtract 3 from the y's, right. Down 3, so minus 3. And so what are my final y values? There we go. So let's graph this. We got 1/10, -5. So that's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pretty much like right on, very close to the line. We got 1, -3. And 10, -1. All right, so your graph, once you connect the points, should look like this. Like this. So what is the asymptote on this graph? That's right, x equals 0. Very good. X equals 0. Okay. So what's my domain going to be then? So, wait. So squiggly line is set builder. X is greater than is just a way to write it, but they ask specifically for interval notation. So you got to use, the parentheses or the bracket, that kind of thing. From where? Parentheses. Whoa, what the? Parentheses what? Parentheses 0, right? Comma. Infinity, that's right. Because the most left is 0, and it's going towards infinity. All right, what's the range going to be then? Comma, but yeah. There it is, that's right. So, and that is 20, what is this? 26. Done in